Hey, Bobby Manning here. Welcome to a practice edition of the Garden Report. This one coming to you remote. Some technical difficulties down at Auerbach Center, but more from today. You just talked about Robert Williams starting in this series. I found some other interesting things at practice to bring to you as well here. And we'll start with this one from Malcolm Brogdon ahead of game one on the overall mood and what happened at practice today.
It's a maturity thing. I think the guy we followed all season, our leader, is Al Horford. And I think he's going to continue to lead us. There was a point today in practice where, guys were, it was a little light. Practice was light, and guys were a little loose. And Al brought us together in the middle of practice and just told us to tighten it up. And I think it's those constant reminders from our leader that's going to help us stay poised, start the series poised, and really locked in.
So, practice stop because of a light effort and a looseness today that Al Horford tried to rally the team from. I think this is the component of the series everyone's trying to figure out on the Celtics side. They're the more talented team. They have the best players in this series. Tatum and Butler probably even out talent-wise to some degree. You may think Butler has the killer instinct and edge in execution and I guess production this postseason that points that in his direction. It's close. Tatum's ceiling, I think, exceeds Butler's significantly when you look at what Tatum did with the 67 points to close the second round. Tougher defense. Miami's defense will give Celtics issues that the 76ers couldn't. Just based on personnel, Bam can guard those wings. I think he said at practice this week he expects to. So all those things come into play when you're looking at matchups and personnel, but that intangible, are the Celtics going to show up in every game in this series? Didn't show up quite like they wanted to today at practice, it appears, if Horford felt the need to speak up like that. I do find that super interesting that Brogdon would put that out there. Maybe a wake-up call for the team. Maybe a little bit of a letdown day after a Game 7, a long series. I guess that's to be expected to some degree, but this team can't have many more letdowns or else they're playing with fire. Game 6, memorable night, though not the way the Celtics wanted to play. They put themselves at immense risk of exiting the postseason extraordinarily early, way earlier than anyone wanted them to. So I don't love that.
CLNS Media's Celtics coverage is brought to you by FanDuel. New customers get a no-sweat first bet up to $1,000. That's bonus bets back if your first bet doesn't win.
I do love, though, Jalen Brown's sense of urgency. I think he's going to take on that Jimmy Butler matchup and embrace that the same way he did James Harden. We'll see if he's able to slow Butler. I think that's going to be a harder task than slowing Harden, but Harden was playing at a high level in that series before Brown started going over screens and trying to take the pick and roll out of the game. I think the Celtics are going to try to do something similar with Rob and Horford in terms of slowing the Butler Bam pick and roll, but they also do some interesting handoff stuff with those perimeter shooters, whether it's Gabe Vincent. Kyle Lowry's going to be off the bench, so that's White and Brogdon's responsibility, and Brogdon and White, I think, both have to play better. White offensively, Brogdon defensively in this series than they did against Philadelphia. Overall, though, I think you're going to be seeing a pretty frustrated, invigorated Heat team trying to get revenge for last year, and a Celtics team that I think is still trying to get its motor going to the full degree that it can here, because they could win this series in 4 or 5 games if they play at their highest level and get contributions from the role players across the board consistently. And the star at the top, I think most importantly, Tatum needs to play at the highest level he can to get this series over with quick, because if he doesn't, Butler's going to steal a game or two. And that's why I do see the Celtics winning this series in 6-7 games. I think it's going to take that long because of that Butler factor. Bam's a big intangible too. Can Rob slow him at that point of attack the way he did last year? I think that pulls the Heat's second best player out of play if that happens, and you're looking at more of a 5-6 game series at that point. But Bam has played well through this postseason run, and Rob, as we talked about in the last video, does he last those 30 minutes or so? I think those are all factors here. Joe Mazzulla talking about Heat culture today and the matchup with Spo. I found that interesting as well.
The word culture on Miami's end. How much do you respect what they've kind of built in the game?
Yeah, I mean, everybody has a culture. I think we have ours as well, and both teams have shown that they're able to get through good times and bad, and it says a lot about the players in the organization more than anything.
And do the Celtics have a coaching disadvantage in this series? I think that's obvious against the best coach in the league. How big of a factor is it? I kicked that around with some of the guys at practice today, and they said, yeah, Joe's got his hands full going against Spoelstra, and Joe continued to talk about players keeping an open mind and a flexibility that I think points toward them being the initiators on a lot of adjustments and I guess scheme points that they want to go out there and make throughout the flow of a game. On the other hand, I think the Celtics players are getting comfortable with trusting Joe to make some of those as well. And we've already discussed that key adjustment in the 6th and 7th game of that Sixers series that ultimately swung it. Who gets credit for that? Still not completely clear. But I do think the players vocalized it and Joe went with it, which I think points toward the trust in both directions there. Spoelstra, though, is going to continue to show the Celtics different looks defensively with many different types of zones while getting contributions from a bunch of unpredictable offensive talents on that roster. Will we see Tyler Hero? Spoelstra says we'll see. Not in game one, certainly. Can't dribble, can't even shoot yet. So I think we're a ways off from that if we see him at all in this series. Victor Oladipo will miss this series in its entirety out for the year with the knee injury. So health in the Celtics' favor from the jump, but that's been the case with the Heat. Going back a couple of rounds now, and they've still been able to win 2 series to get here into this rematch. I'm wicked excited for it. We're going to preview it tonight in full. But that's just a taste of the mood at practice here. Heat practice down in Miami. Check out that on CLNS Media. Their players talk today, as well as Jalen, Malcolm, and Joe today at Celtics practice. Subscribe over there and check out my reaction to the news. Robert Williams will start tonight. Had that down at Auerbach Center earlier today. And this has been a practice edition of the Garden Report. I'm Bobby Manning. We'll talk to you later tonight.